Lars Nootbaar's mother didn't expect to cry. She had come to the ballpark the way parents come to ballparks when their children play professional baseball, with the particular mixture of pride and nervousness that never fully goes away, no matter how many games you have sat through, no matter how many years have passed since the child in question was small enough to need you in a different way. She had come to watch her son play. She had come to be present. She had not come prepared for what happened in the aisle after the final out. Nobody had prepared her for Shohei Ohtani. The game itself had been difficult. Japan had lost. Not narrowly, not in the kind of defeat that can be reframed as a moral victory or a lesson learned. They had been held without a hit. A no-hitter. The kind of outcome that strips a lineup of its dignity in the most public way the sport knows how to deliver. For the players who had stepped into that batter's box one after another and come away with nothing, the walk back to the clubhouse carried a specific weight. Lars Nootbaar understood that weight. He had felt it in his own at-bats. He had stood in that box and worked and competed and come away empty-handed in the way that every player on the Japanese side had come away empty-handed that night. It was not a game any of them would choose to remember. But Lars Nootbaar was not thinking only about himself. He was thinking about his parents. They had traveled to be there. That detail matters more than it might initially seem. This was not a local game. This was not a short drive down a familiar highway to a stadium they had been to a dozen times before. They had made the kind of trip that parents make when they understand that certain moments in their child's life are worth rearranging everything else around. His father had watched Lars play baseball since he was small enough that the bat seemed too large for his hands. His mother had sat through enough games in enough weather across enough years to have earned, many times over, the right to stay home when the traveling became inconvenient. They had not stayed home. After the final out, Nootbaar found them in the way families find each other after games, through the particular geography of familiarity, the knowledge of where the other person will be without needing to look too hard. He had an idea. He wanted them to meet Shohei Ohtani. This requires a moment of context to fully appreciate. Shohei Ohtani in the immediate aftermath of a game, any game, winning or losing, is a man with many demands on his attention and his time. There are responsibilities. There are media obligations. There are the internal rituals of a competitor processing what has just happened on the field, the quiet necessary work of a mind that takes the sport as seriously as his does. A no-hitter loss is not the lightest context in which to approach him. Nootbaar knew this. He was not oblivious to the timing. But he also knew something about Ohtani that the outside world sometimes struggles to see past the magnitude of his talent, that behind the records and the home runs and the innings pitched and the historic contract and all the weight of being the most remarkable two-way player the game has ever produced, there is a man who pays attention to people. Not to crowds. To people. He brought his parents anyway. What happened in that aisle took perhaps 10 minutes. In the architecture of a professional baseball evening, 10 minutes is nothing. Games run 3 hours. Post-game routines extend well beyond that. 10 minutes in a corridor is a breath between larger things. But the people who witnessed it, the small number of people who happened to be in that particular space at that particular moment, have described it consistently and with the kind of specific detail that attaches itself to moments that mean something. Ohtani saw them coming. He did not wait to be introduced. He did not stand in the practiced posture of a public figure preparing to receive admirers. He moved toward them. That distinction matters. The difference between a man who receives people and a man who moves toward them is not subtle. It changes the entire shape of the encounter before a single word has been spoken. He greeted Nootbaar's father first. In Japanese culture, the greeting extended to the elder in a room carries specific significance. It is not accidental. It is not simply the order in which people happen to be standing. It is a statement about who deserves to be seen first, about whose presence is being honored above the general noise of the moment. Ohtani knew this. He had grown up understanding this. And in a corridor outside a baseball clubhouse after a no-hit loss, he applied it without hesitation and without performance. He bowed. Not the brief, perfunctory nod that can pass for a bow when a man is performing respect rather than feeling it. A real bow. The kind that requires something from the person making it. Nootbaar's father, who had not expected this, stood very still for a moment. Then Ohtani spoke. He spoke in the careful, deliberate English he has worked to build across his years in American baseball, the English of a man who understands that language is a form of respect toward the person you are speaking to, and who therefore treats it with the same seriousness he brings to everything else. He thanked them. Not for coming to the game. Not for supporting their son's career in the general way that parents support careers. He thanked them specifically for the version of Lars Nootbaar that had shown up to represent Japan in this tournament. For the way their son had carried himself not just on the field but in the spaces between games, in the moments when the cameras were elsewhere and the character of a person reveals itself most honestly. He said, and this is the part that those present have returned to most often in the days since, that playing alongside their son had been something he was grateful for. Not proud of. Not pleased by. Grateful for. The word choice was not accidental. Ohtani does not reach for words carelessly. Grateful is the word you use when you understand that something has been given to you. When you recognize that the presence of another person in your life has added something that you could not have added yourself. Nootbaar's mother heard this. She had been standing slightly to the side, in the way that people sometimes position themselves when they are trying to take in a moment rather than participate in it, trying to hold it from a small distance so that it doesn't disappear too quickly into the blur of experience. She had been watching her son's face. She had been watching the way Ohtani spoke to her husband. She had been absorbing all of it with the particular attention of a parent who understands that they are witnessing something their child will carry for a long time. When Ohtani turned to her, she was not prepared. He did not treat her as an afterthought. He did not turn to her in the way that people sometimes turn to the quieter person in a group, briefly, obligatorily, before returning attention to the more central conversation. He turned to her completely. With the full weight of his attention, which anyone who has been on the receiving end of it will tell you is a different experience than ordinary attention. He told her that her son made the team better. Not that he played well. Not that he was talented. That he made the team better. That the people around him, the teammates who had spent weeks in close quarters with him, who had eaten meals with him and traveled with him and sat through the specific tedium and tension of tournament baseball with him, were better for his presence among them. For a mother, there is no more precise thing you can say about her child. She cried. She had not expected to. She would tell people afterward that she had felt it coming from the moment Ohtani turned toward her with that complete attention, and that there was nothing she could do to stop it, and that she did not particularly want to. Lars Nootbaar stood to the side of all of this and watched. He is not a man who talks frequently about his inner life. He plays with the kind of outward expressiveness that the game rewards, the energy, the engagement, the visible enthusiasm that makes teammates want to be near him. But underneath that expressiveness there is something quieter and more guarded that he does not often put into words. Those who know him say that he did not say much in that corridor. That he watched his parents with his father's stillness and his mother's tears and Ohtani standing between them like a bridge between two worlds, the American family that had raised this son and the Japanese national team that had claimed him as one of their own, and that whatever he felt in that moment, he kept most of it for himself. That felt right to the people watching. Some things are not meant to be narrated in the moment they happen. Some things need to be carried quietly for a while before they can be spoken. Ohtani left the corridor without ceremony. He had other obligations. The evening had more demands on it. He moved back into the machinery of the night with the same unhurried intention that had characterized his arrival. But he paused once, briefly, at the edge of the corridor. He turned back toward Nootbaar. He said something short. 2 or 3 words, depending on who is remembering. Nothing that required translation. Nothing that needed to be unpacked or interpreted or held up to the light to reveal its meaning. Nootbaar nodded. That was enough. The game that night had produced no hits. The scoreboard told one story. The aisle told another. And the second story did not require a scoreboard to keep track of who had won. Some moments in baseball live in the statistics. Some live in the standings. Some live in the highlight reels that play on loops until the next remarkable thing replaces them. And some moments live only in the people who were present for them. In a mother's tears. In a father standing very still. In a son watching both of them and keeping what he felt mostly to himself. In 10 minutes in a corridor that no camera captured and no box score recorded and no transaction wire will ever mention. That was the samurai spirit. Not on the mound. Not in the batter's box. There. In that aisle. In those 10 minutes. In the way one extraordinary man chose to see the people in front of him.